Villains, gangsters, or faces as they prefer to be called, are the people who have been making the Irish newspaper headlines for all the wrong reasons for the past 50 years. Some are instantly recognisable, many are not.
If I knew I was either going to kill someone, I was going to get a life sentence, or I was going to be killed.
My name is Bernard O'Mahony, and I will be taking you on a journey through the Irish underworld.
There's a lot of hitmen in Dublin, and if you cross their paths, you better take them out, because if you don't, they're going to take you out.
And they don't care whether you're a good person or you're a bad person. And if you have the name done, that's it, you're finished.
Some of those involved in Ireland's most infamous crimes have agreed to go on camera for the first time to tell me why and how they say they happened.
He's not dead, no?
He's not dead. He's not dead.
All right.
Yet.
Hi, this is Wayne Dunham here. I'm not this mad killer that put in the tapes. I never murdered this man. I didn't take part in it. I had no knowledge of it.
I've lived that life. I've experienced the highs and the numerous lows. So let me take you on a journey into the heart of the underworld.
My lonely prison walls, I heard a young man calling. Nothing matters, Mary, when you're free. Against the famine and the ground, our belly cuts me down. Oh, you must raise your child with dignity.
Raising our children with dignity is a goal we all strive to achieve. The vast majority of parents do, but in some parts of Ireland, a country with a reputation for compassion and social justice, there has been a sharp increase in violent crime, which has cast a shadow over communities, leading some people to feel that they have been forgotten by the authorities. Aristotle wrote that poverty is the parent of crime, and according to figures released by Social Justice Ireland, 790,000 people are now living in poverty, a rise of 40,000 since 2016. An analysis published by the Irish Independent confirmed that people in Ireland are 6 times more likely to be shot and killed than anywhere else in the Irish and British Isles. Much of this violence is attributed to the increased prevalence of drugs and the clannish culture in organised crime. With disturbing statistics like this, it's hard to argue with Aristotle's conclusion. I spoke to Christy Dunn, who, along with many of Ireland's most infamous criminals, was sent to an industrial school as a child where he suffered horrific abuse. Described by the media as the godfather of Irish crime, Dunn is not a man who often talks about his colourful past. Aggrieved by events in his childhood, he is quick to blame the authorities, but reluctant to accept his own guilt.
Before I was 12 years of age, I was sent to an industrial school, and very, very tough, harsh place where you were beaten, bullied, starved, and very lonely place. I had to rake out all the fires, light all the fires in the school, in the different classrooms, and the headmaster of the school, he picked on me and tormented me. So one day I gave him a black eye, and that was it. I was just a demon, right? It was like as if I killed somebody. And I never really got any education at school or anything like that. And I never got any education when I went into the approved school. And the only thing I learned in there was I used to have to fight other kids for our dinners, and we'd fight for our food. And we'd go into a handball alley and punch the head off each other so I could eat his dinner or he could eat mine, if we had teeth left to eat it with. That's how bad it was. And it was really bad when I was a kid in Ireland. Well, I mean, if you look around Ireland today, there's so many children suffering, and there's so many people homeless, and all the people who are responsible for all that, they don't know. They just, they listen to what they're told and they act upon what they're told, and they don't care whether you're a good person or you're a bad person. And if you have the name done, that's it, you're finished.
Still a young boy, a child in fact, Christy Dunn sought refuge from the horrors of the industrial schools in England.
So I went to England to my grandfather, and from England I joined the coal mines. And by the time I was 13 years of age, I was a mile working underground. And so I spent my adolescent years in England, working in England, different jobs, went to sea, different things. I do a lot of film work and all that kind of stuff, and I used to work as an extra and all that, and I worked in about 40 different films, and that I earned. But then one day I went to get a job on a film. I think it was called Darling Lily, with Julie Andrews from Rock Hudson. And when I went down to Actors Equity to go to be sent to the location, who did I meet? Only my ex-school inspector. And as soon as he saw me, I never got a job in another film. So they're the people that destroyed my life when I was a kid.
Christy was ordered to return to Ireland by his father when his younger brother Hubert drowned. Still wanted by the Garda for juvenile misdemeanours, Christy sought sanctuary in a church.
Whether you ever heard of religious sanctuary, but I saw sanctuary with a friend of mine, a Jesuit priest, an unsung hero of Ireland. His name was Father Michael Sweetman. He granted me sanctuary, and by the time I left the religious home I was in, writing my book, I got into the taxi business. He arranged to get me a taxi through political influence, and I got a taxi, and I left, met a beautiful young lady, got married. Then I went into the building.
Initially, Christy's construction company flourished, but he believed that his reputation and that of his family brought about its downfall.
I was very successful, and I had 4 of my brothers working for me. My father was a foreman for me, and the police and other people, they were jealous, as far as I can see, and we were kind of, well, I always felt that myself, I was always kind of, I wouldn't be welcome when I'd be dealing with business people. I'd be frowned upon, looked down upon, because the stigma was there, the stigmata that this is Christy Dunn from the Liberties, and his father was Bronco Dunn, a gunman, right? A man who got convicted for murder, and which was spread by a famous journalist here. There's absolutely no truth to that allegation. My father never murdered anybody. But yet, it's all allegations without a grain of truth. But I have the truth. And I know my father never killed anybody and was never charged with murder, not convicted for murder. My father was never in trouble. My father was a Republican, never involved in crime.
Christy's father did kill a man, but he was convicted of manslaughter, not murder. Therefore, neither Christy or the media have been completely honest. Why let the truth spoil a good story, some journalists would say in their defence. Christy Dunn would undoubtedly reply, because lies and innuendo can destroy lives.
Well, I remember I went out of business in 1967. I was doing a contract for a very famous family, and a doctor who was head of the Crumlin Hospital. And I remember I was working on his house, excuse me, and I remember going out, getting a phone call from the lady at the house, and she said, "Mr. Dunn, will you come out tomorrow and remove all your stuff from the house, and I don't want your men in my house. And I went out, and what's the problem? She said, did you watch the television last night? I was wondering what she was talking about. But however, it seems that this program is on television by a priest being interviewed, a priest who turned out to be notorious in Ireland, right? Father Michael Cleary, they call him the singing priest, denied his own children, right? But anyhow, he demonized me for an hour on television. I never met a man in my life, but he destroyed me. He said I was involved in sex. I was a gangster. I was a godfather. That lady who called me out to remove all my equipment, she relied on what he said on television as being gospel truth. A man I never even met. I wasn't really involved in going out and committing serious crimes or anything like that. I'd say I would have relied on my intelligence, and like I wasn't foolish or stupid, but I certainly know I never hurted anybody.
Like many criminals, Christy Dunn justified his criminal activities by claiming they were carried out to provide for his family.
I was just interested in raising my family, but I never got a moment's peace from the police. And because I was the head of the family, you know what they say about cutting the head off?
I do.
Well, that's the way the police viewed me. My last convictions, for instance, every vestige of law was ignored in my case. I was just processed into prison. I kidnapped the postmaster and his wife and children, and then stole the money from the post office.
I like a tiger kidnapping, they call it.
Yeah, it would have been regarded one of the first, and then I was accused of tying a bomb onto the postmaster's back. And indeed, I remember when my trial was in court, and they were giving the evidence about the bomb on the postmaster's back. And it was so dramatic that when it got down to the bare essentials, that the bomb on his back was removed, and it turned out to be candles. Everybody in the court broke into fits of laughter. And I remember the trial judge at the time, a fellow called Lynch, Dominic Lynch, turning around sharply and looking at me to see my reaction. And I didn't think it was funny. I thought it must have been very traumatic for the postmaster. But the point is, I didn't do what I was charged with. I'm very annoyed about the fact that I was convicted for the Finglas post office, because throughout that trial it was alleged that a young child had been threatened and all that kind of stuff. And look, they called me the Godfather, the official Godfather of Ireland. I just don't want to know about being a Godfather. A good father, yes, but I love children, and the last thing I would ever do is hurt a child. I served a full 8.5 years, but I mean, I went into prison when I was 58 years of age, and when I came out, he gave me 40 quid, and I never, like when I was young, I never drew social welfare, or I never sponged off the state or anything like that. And when I went to get social welfare, when I went even to get my pension, I had a hard job to get what I'm entitled to.
Christy Dunn's reputation has undoubtedly been a heavy cross for him to bear. He is a criminal, and many will say he deserves no less. However, many innocent people raised in deprived areas, such as Ballymun in Dublin or Moyross in Limerick, find that would-be employers shun them because of the reputation of the areas where they live. Unable to secure legitimate employment, some of these people see crime as the only way to survive. Christy Dunn's younger brother Larry was of that mindset and earned the dubious accolade of being the man who first introduced heroin into Ireland. Nobody could have foreseen the devastation this evil drug was going to cause. Like an aggressive cancer, it transformed legions of healthy young people almost overnight.
When the heroin hit the streets of Dublin, and yeah, you're right there, nobody knew, nobody realised the damage, nor the consequences of this devil's poison, as I call it. But it wasn't long before it became obvious the effects of this drug. And I mean, you could say Larry was like the Titanic to the Dunn family, right? He brought us all down.
If Larry was the Titanic of the Dunn family, Christie was undoubtedly its sister ship. In 1966, there were only 12 murders committed in Ireland, none of which involved guns. Just 4 decades later, there had been a 1,675% increase in murder cases, and a large proportion of those killings were gun-related. The dramatic increase in murder came about because of the introduction of guns and the birth of gangs. They were both a byproduct of Sierra Era, a group made up of revolutionaries, anarchists and paramilitaries who wanted to ignite a socialist revolution. One of its most prominent members was Christie Dunn. Following the funeral of a comrade, Christie had made a political speech and fired a shot into the air. After being sentenced to 6 months imprisonment for that crime, he had ran from the dock and punched the judge.
I most certainly did, yes. I am a Republican. Well, I don't wish to say how I assisted the Republican movement, but once you're a Republican, you're a Republican. I believe in a free Ireland by peaceful means. That's what I believe in. We had a great man here, Michael Collins. He went to England, signed a treaty, came back to Ireland, and half the people didn't accept the treaty, and a civil war ensued. And you had people who fought against the treaty, people who fought for the treaty, but they all ended up becoming policemen, right? And some of them turned out to be the worst bastards, God forgive me for saying it, that I ever met. Those people, and school inspectors and priests, they went around spying on families in ghetto areas.
The 3rd of April 1970 was a defining moment in Irish criminal history. 4 armed members of Sierra Era shot dead Richard Fallon, an unarmed policeman. The Rubicon had been crossed. The age of innocence was no more. Gun crime in Ireland had arrived. In the north, others driven by civil rights abuses and Republican ideals tore up their ballot papers and picked up the Armalite. Joe Doherty is one of the IRA's most infamous volunteers. He shot dead an SAS captain and escaped from prison before seeking refuge in the United States. The pro-Republican Americans warmed to Joe, and a street was named after him in New York. But Joe seeks neither praise nor recognition for the things he did. The war in Ireland is a struggle he believes should never have happened.
Over 20,000 people were burnt out of their homes, had to flee across the border and things like that there. The British government reacted and sent the British Army in. At that particular time, we thought they were coming to save us, in the sense they were. As young squaddies coming onto the street, they sympathised with Catholics. They knew about the discrimination, they knew about the attacks on our home. But politics had taken hold, and the British Army, for some reason, had turned on our community. So I actually remember going to school, being stopped by British Army patrols 3 or 4 times before I got to school. School books were thrown onto the street, so they were very aggressive. When you were put against the wall with your hands up against the wall, sirs, you were called Irish B or whatever. All of a sudden, the young lad at 14, 15, I had a sense of being anti-British. And it wasn't a sense about the British people, it's what the British government was doing here. So I got involved in the riots around here, throwing stones and petrol whatever. Then I joined an organisation called the Fianna Éireann, and it's an Irish Republican scout movement, but not like your normal scouts, because we were taken into small rooms like this, and we were taught how to put bombs together, explosives, AM1 carbines, Thompson submachine guns. You know, I mean, you raise, I'm a youth worker now. When I think back, we were only 14, 15 years of age. We were children, you get a fact. But then I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to fight for Ireland, I want to fight for Irish freedom.
There are, of course, always two sides to every story. Johnny Adair and Sam McCrory were Ulster's most infamous loyalist terrorists. From a very early age, they felt that their community and way of life was being threatened by Republicans. They had been brought up believing that Ulster was and should remain British, and all Catholics were their enemy. But nobody ever explained to them why.
I was about 8 or 9 when the Troubles just broke out for real in 1969, and from there on, right through my teenage and adulthood life, we were just brought up hating everything Catholic and Republican. We felt threatened, and it was drummed into us that these people hated us and they wanted to kill us because they didn't like everything British. People were burned out of their homes, Protestants in one area and Catholics in the other, and mixed areas. And then it went on that both communities just lived in separate areas, like, for etc., the Falls and the Shankill. Shankill was Protestants and Catholics, Falls was Catholics. We went on to join the Loyalist paramilitary group, namely the Ulster Defence Association, which was illegal in them times, and this is just throughout the years, as the Troubles progressed and got worse, and we were just born into them. And
well, I think just as you grow up and you're in your area and you see the attacks you were coming under by the Republican movement and the nationalist community, you just decided enough was enough, because the government weren't giving you any hand and the soldiers and the police weren't giving you any hand, so you decided to take matters in your own hand, join a paramilitary and fight back.
I'd been to prison on a number of occasions for attempted murders of Sinn Féin members, possession of weapons, membership, and the most serious charge would have been directing terrorism, where I received 16 years in prison for that.
What about you, Skill? What were you in prison for?
Conspiracy to murder. 5 of us, 1 in the leading car, 4 in the hijack car, were caught with an AK-47 machine gun, a handgun, gone up into West Belfast to kill the leader of Belfast IRA. So we were caught en route. So, but before they'd been done 2 one-year remands for attempted murders, kidnapping, hijacking, and lifted numerous times along with Johnny for numerous murders, numerous attempted murders, numerous bombings and shootings. But it was all par for course. I mean, it's just part and parcel of the game.
The heroin epidemic that Larry Dunn had spawned was seen by some terrorist organisations as a means of attracting support for their cause. Heroin had destroyed the lives of thousands of people, and so the paramilitaries began executing dealers in an effort to win favour with disgruntled members of the public. However, many believe that this was just a front to control the lucrative trade themselves, and time has proved that they were right.
There was no longer need for either the IRA or loyalist paramilitaries, but they still exist today, but they exist only for criminality, and criminality only.
We were there to defend our communities. See the people now, 20 years fast forward, are terrorising their own communities. They're flooded with drugs. You know what I mean? They're shooting people dead on a monthly basis, or knee-capping or punishment beatings for no reason. So the very people that we fought to protect, they are now terrorising them. They're nothing but, honestly, they're using the name as loyalists. They're using it as a cover name as gangsterism. That's all. They're just terrorising their own community, the very community that we protected.
The terrorists were not the only people who were refusing to stand by and watch heroin wipe out a generation of children. Dubliner Mick Rafferty and others formed a group called the Concerned Parents Against Drugs.
The root of the drug problem in this area is in the 70s, when the nature of employment in this area changed. The docks changed, containerisation, all the dock-related industry vanished. So there was a whole generation in the 70s and early 80s there was mass unemployment. During that summer of 82, the area was swamped with not just marijuana, not just with soft drugs, but with heroin. Kids were falling into that abyss of addiction. Initially, we formed the Concerned Parents. And the motto was very simple. The motto was pushers out. Pushers, 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 out, out, out. And the state rather than entering into a dialogue with the parents of addicts, they saw it as some sort of IRA front, IRA, or so, you know, as a subversive organisation. So an opportunity was missed. Now, there was absolutely no doubt that the state targeted some of the leaders and they ended up in prison for trying to protect their young.
The concerned parents group would identify drug dealers, then mobilise hundreds of residents who would go to the dealer's door and tell them that they had to quit dealing or leave. Those foolish enough to resist were beaten and forcefully evicted from their homes. In one incident, a heroin addict died. This led to the Garda charging 4 leading figures in the concerned parents group for their roles in various incidents. They spent a year in prison awaiting trial, and this led to the collapse of the movement.
The state woke up when Veronica Gearing, a campaigning journalist, was shot or assassinated openly on the Naas Road by one of the gangs because she was exposing them. For a while, the then minister, Pat Rabbitte, sought out community participation in the responses to the issues. That's all gone. The foot has been taken off the pedal. A few people will actually say, even though there's different types of drugs now, it's much more complicated, that the drug problem is as bad now as it was in the dark days of the 80s. The problem now is the dealers have got much more brazen. So the nature of the problem keeps changing. And we'd argue that unless you get to the roots of the demand for drugs, which in our opinion lies in social exclusion, poverty, the nature of a class society, unless you get to that roots, you'll always have it. You'll always have the demand.
On Wednesday, the 15th of December 1993, a joint declaration of peace brought about a ceasefire between the warring factions in Ireland. This encouraged organisations like the IRA to step up their war on criminal gangs in the hope it would help them achieve their ambitions via the ballot box. Clearing estates of heroin would undoubtedly be a vote winner. And so death squads, made up of ruthless terrorists like Billy Clare, were sent in to eliminate the dealers.
I suppose going back to where it all began for me was when I was involved in the Concerned Parents Against Drugs on the south side of Dublin with so at that time some very, very good Republicans who were committed to the war on drugs. And I suppose the most notorious target of the Concerned Parents Against Drugs in that time was a fellow by the name of Jimmy Gantley. The 2 operations against him at the time of the Concerned Parents was one, an attempt to blow his house up and with him in it.
Was anyone arrested for that?
Well, I was arrested for that and back then, and again released through lack of evidence, and that was, you know, he lived to fight another day or to deal another day.
What sort of operations did you were you sent on when you were in the IRA in Dublin?
Well, I mean, the ones that I can discuss about mostly were actually directed towards drug dealers, and that kind of activity was most of the activity, and was centred around attacks on drug dealers and things like that. You know, that was sort of Dublin.
So can you describe how that worked? Was it direct action against drugs? Was that the...
Well, there were community-based groups that Republicans supported and threw their support behind, and I suppose that was my aim was just to target drug dealers as whether they targeted them or not.
But when you say they targeted drug dealers, what did they do? Name them and shame them, or?
Well, execute them.
Execute them.
Yeah. I suppose if you're looking for one instant, I suppose these what the media portray as notorious, these Westies, these characters who were, you know, where we had one incident where they were causing chaos and havoc in Blanchardstown, an area in the north side of Dublin, and Bernard Suggs, or Verb as they call him, He was asked to come to a meeting, and when he came to the meeting, he was asked to desist from his activities and leave the area. He refused to do so, and as a result of that meeting, he was blasted twice in the stomach and left squealing on the ground like a pig and the rat he was. And, I mean, that was his kind of his claim to fame. He was soon executed by other drug dealers after that, but that was I suppose one incident where these people were portrayed in the media as dangerous, armed and dangerous drug dealers. But the media like to portray people as something they're not, and as a result they get hurt.
Billy's crusade wasn't just aimed at gangsters involved in the drug trade. He claims terrorists or anyone else earning money directly or indirectly from drugs were legitimate targets.
In one incident where in Gorey, County Wexford, in the south of Ireland, where on a road like this, where one member of the Continuity IRA and his drug dealing friend was in the passenger seat, and when they got to the roundabout on the main road, a car came up behind him, and there was a car in front of him that slowed down, and as the car slowed down, the Jeep had to slow down eventually till it stopped. And as the Irish police maintained that I jumped out of the car and manhandled the two drug dealers to the ground, and as they went to the ground, allegedly that I held a gun to their heads and tried to shoot them, but the gun jammed. And as the media then, as if you're reading the media, I was subsequently arrested for trying to execute them two dirty Republican rats, drug dealing rats, and I was arrested and held for 2 days as a result of that incident. I mean, drug dealers were executed in the 80s and 90s and continue to be, I suppose.
But are they warned? Are they,
Well, it would be highly unlikely that they would be warned. It would be a highly unlikely situation if a drug dealer was warned, or that he was going to be kidnapped, if he was going to be abducted or punishment shooting or executed.
But isn't there a danger if I went to the Republicans as a concerned community member and said, Billy Smith is a drug dealer, and they don't warn him, they just whack him?
Well, you see, I mean, it's not as plain. I mean, obviously there'd be an investigation, and people on the ground. I mean, Ireland is a small country, and Dublin is a small place, and pretty much people know who people are and what people do. So it wouldn't be a case where somebody just come to somebody and say, look, he's doing this. There obviously would be an intense investigation into that person and his activities, and before any decisive action was taken. So
how long were you a member of the IRA, and how did you come to leave?
Well, I was expelled from the provisional IRA for my pursuit of action against drug dealers. That's why I was expelled, and that's the only reason why I was expelled from the provisional IRA. I was expelled for my war against the drug dealers in Dublin. Extreme republicanism, whereas I then was caught up with the INLA for a number of years, and I mean, in fairness to them, they were more extreme in their views against drug dealers, and at that time anyway, they were certainly they were on board with my views, and I thought it was a good platform to continue struggle against the drug dealers in Dublin.
So what about your time with the INLA? I mean, what's the difference between the INLA and the IRA?
Well, the provisional IRA were very well organised, very well armed, very well organised and disciplined organisation. The INLA were a much more smaller, but if not ruthless organisation. But certainly my time within the INLA, we had the same. Most of the members in Dublin had the same train of thought, and it was extreme, extreme violence against drug dealers. Which I mean, you have to show these people more violence than they have imagined, because these people live on a pedestal that because you're a drug dealer, they must be violent and they must be feared. So
What sort of attacks are carried out on drug dealers? Is it just shootings, or have you got any knowledge of or examples of other types of attacks?
Well, there's no, there'd be no limit. You wouldn't limit yourself to one type of attack. There'd be, as I said, you don't come to fight big drug gangs who have assets behind them using Salvation Army tactics. You got to hit them with full strength and everything you got, and look for their weakness. And when you find a weakness, that's whether it's kidnapping, shootings, petrol bombings, grenades, whatever, is being used on them. People would support that, I suppose, because these people are devastating communities, and they don't care about what they sell or who they sell it to. So you must meet them with the same train of thought that you don't care about them or their families.
Where did your time at the INLA come to an end?
It pretty much came to an end with Declan Duffy, who's the leader of the INLA in Dublin, who was a character, who was involved in backing up drug dealers and supporting drug dealers while pretending to be some kind of crusader against drug dealers. But he's unscrupulous people, and if you move it up then to the likes of the real IRA, where you had these characters in Dublin who tried to promote a culture of fear, but they were no more than street gangsters and street cowards, and tried to live on a reputation that because they were part of an organisation that they were to be feared, but they turned out to be nothing more than supporters of drug dealers as well, and that was their downfall, because they were so intertwined in the drug game that eventually led to their demise.
What happened to Duffy then?
Well, Duffy was expelled from Dublin by people who would be against drugs, and that he was no longer wanted here because of his association with drug dealers, supporting drug dealers, and being paid by drug dealers to go up against other drug dealers. And I suppose if you like you have to be clear cut in the game you're in. It's either you can't have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. It's black and white basically, and you won't last long. And that's what happened, I suppose, with the leadership of the real IRA. They were cavorting with drug dealers, and eventually that led to their demise. That they weren't clear cut. They weren't black and white. They weren't a force against drug dealers.
So what happened to Duffy then? He was expelled from Dublin?
He was expelled, and he was sent packing from the capital.
But he's not dead now?
He's not dead.
All right.
Yet.
In 2010, Billy was left clinically dead following his arrest for the murder of 26-year-old Stephen Amira. Father of 3 Amira was shot but still alive when his killer took him into the woods, threw him into a pre-dug grave and buried him alive.
I was on my way to the gym in I think it was October 2010, and I was surrounded by police in balaclavas with Heckler and Koch machine guns and Glock pistols, all automatic weapons, having no regard for the public safety, surrounding me in a circle formation with automatic weapons, and I was rendered unconscious. And I think it was later on that day where I was rushed into hospital in Dublin, and I was pronounced clinically dead for a short while. Later, it transpired that they had forced me to drink poison, which there was no traces found, but the hospital records showed that exactly what happened, and that's what happened. And then I was brought back to life in I think it was Vincent's Hospital in Dublin, and made a full recovery.
What were they arresting you for?
Murder.
For murder?
Murder, yeah. Allegedly for burying a drug dealer, shooting and burying a drug dealer up the mountains, and he was found 6 months later, allegedly.
What about today? Are you a member of any group now? Or
No. I distance myself now from republicanism completely, and as we speak today, I see them now. I see Republicans in Dublin, the likes of the real IRA. I class them now as a legitimate target. They're as far as I was concerned, that they work hand in hand with senior drug dealers both here and in Spain, and as I said, they would be a legitimate target now, and they have been for some time.
One suspects that Billy's life insurance premiums are higher than the average mortgage. and he must have as many fans as enemies. Sinner or saint, it's hard to decide, but it's pretty much odds on that he will never reach old age.
The future is rosy and bright, and it's never been any other way, and we'll continue, doing what we do, and we'll give it to the best of our ability, and it's been like that since I was in my teens, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. I think the only time I'll stop is when I take my last breath.
Which may come about because of somebody else wanting to take you out.
Well, I'm the same as any other person, but I don't take it as a, we just do what we do, and we don't gloat, and if somebody
Doesn't that bother you though?
Not in the slightest.
And do you think you are a target for some people?
It's quite possible. Some of these drug dealers and gangsters blow some of that stuff up their nose and might dream and talk about it. But we're here. I'm here. I'm here. I'm not hiding. I'm here. So I'm up front and centre.
When you consider the pitfalls of being a drug dealer, imprisonment, being evicted by concerned parents, or executed by the likes of Billy Clare, it's surprising that anyone with a hint of common sense would get involved. But drug dealing is a career choice for many because it offers riches beyond the means of most unqualified working class people. Sean Donahue was a significant heroin dealer in Dublin. Like many, Sean's childhood dreams were forged by the gangsters on the rundown estate where he spent his formative years. They flaunted the rewards of their illicit trade, impressing and ultimately influencing the children they lived amongst.
My earliest memories of growing up in Dublin, when I was on the streets, we'd have the only games or toys we had back then was the likes of cans for kick the can and hide and seek and all that type of stuff. We used to see guys and robbing motorbikes and taking chases off the police and stuff like that. And we used to kind of look to them and think, wow, I want to be just like him. They were like hero type figures when we were kids growing up, When you go around Dublin now and you see all big flash BMs, Mercedes, especially Audis, all the big drug dealers, all their girlfriends and all their friends, they're all driving the big flash cars. And kids unfortunately grow up and see that, and they see the easy money and the easy lifestyle, but they don't know what comes behind that. They just see all the good stuff and the glitter and glamour, but behind all of that is madness. There's madness and there's no peace in that life, Nothing but trouble comes with it. And we moved out to Clondalkin then, when I was around 13, 14 years of age, and my dad started to hit me a bit more and more, so I ran away from home. Started sleeping in the back of cars every night as a 13, 14-year-old kid now, I was only a kid, so that was survival of the fittest really. Then I had to steal, I had to learn to steal, I had to learn to fight on the streets to survive basically as a young kid, Most of my friends in the housing estate where we grew up in Clondalkin would have come from some sort of dysfunctional family. Their parents would have been alcoholics or on drugs or whatever. So, growing up as kids in them estates, we could all relate to each other, so we all stuck together. We were all like brothers, we were like a band of brothers. We all used to look out for each other, and we start drinking alcohol around the parks, and then from there it progressed from robbing small motorbikes to robbing cars. And then we became good at robbing cars, and we became good drivers, and pretty skillful drivers too. So then we started doing robberies all around the country.
Inevitably, Donahue was eventually caught and imprisoned, where he met an old friend who introduced him to the murky world of drug dealing.
I met one particular friend of mine. He's a really good friend of mine. And he'd be very much involved in moving drugs around, large amounts of drugs, and we became very good friends in prison. And me being a criminal, I wanted the easy money. I didn't want to be doing robberies anymore because it was all getting too hard now, too much technology. So when I finished the 8 years in prison, I came out and started selling drugs. First of all in the city centre here in Dublin, flooded the place with heroin. It was already flooded anyways, I just happened to get a good spot and flood that. I'd make anything between €4,000 a day. That was just getting other addicts to knock out heroin for me, €4,000 a day. Added up at the end of the week, it's nice money and it's easy money.
Easy money may be, but at what price? Sean's closest friend, James Kenny McDonough, went missing in October 2010. He had fallen out with a gang over a drug debt, and was also suspected of involvement in the attempted murder of Mark the Guinea Pig Desmond, a notorious Dublin gangster. 14 months later, 2 hikers in the Dublin hills discovered McDonough's body. Garda believe he was shot in the head in a revenge attack by Desmond, who has since been murdered himself.
My friend James, unfortunately he was abducted on a back road and took up the mountains and shot in the head up there, you know. They found his body 2 years later. Back then there was a couple of different gangs who had a couple of different grievances with each other, so I was guilty through association because of who my friends were. This gang wants to shoot a few heads in this gang, and this gang wants to shoot a few heads in this gang, and then you're caught in the middle before you know it. Even though you've nothing got to do with the shootings, because these are your friends over here, you're guilty as well. Anyone in them circles knows who all the hitmen are in Dublin. The main hitmen in Dublin, and you know, there's a lot of guys in this city who take you out with the blink of an eye and wouldn't bat an eyelid doing it, you know, and they're good at what they do. They're no slouches and they're no idiots, like, you know, they'll put trackers on your car. They'll do all high-tech stuff on you just to get you exactly where they want you, and then they come up and bang you. The last guy who got done there 7, 8 months ago, the Guinea Pig, his nickname is 38 Revolver. You know, tracked him down for years, they eventually got him in a park over in Lucan there. So, you know, it's just a matter of time in that world, and when you're living that lifestyle, you know.
The very nature of crime in modern times has made old-fashioned policing redundant. Officers are pitting their wits against criminals who use high-tech equipment and wield high-powered weapons in their quest for control. Inevitably, almost understandably, a minority of officers, frustrated by the gall of criminals, remove those they deem guilty by any means necessary. Donahue claims that he was set up for possessing heroin that actually belonged to a friend. He was sentenced to 8 years imprisonment.
They wanted me off the streets, and they always said they were going to get me. So they eventually got me. They stitched me up for £100 worth of heroin, and I got 8 years for that, which is unheard of, really. I was driving along in a car one day, giving my ex-girlfriend a lift. She had a kid for me. She was an addict, I wasn't. They pulled us in. They found €100 worth of heroin in her bag, and told her, she wrote a statement saying it was mine. They'd let her off and get me years. So they got me years in prison. I was angry. I was angry for a lot of years in prison. Then I started to forget about all of that and let it go, like, you know, and just look. If I'd have got caught for the stuff I did do, I would have got an awful lot more in prison. So, you know, take life as it comes, you know, and take it with a pinch of salt. You learn from your mistakes too, you know. I was sleeping with guns under my pillow every night. I was paranoid to bits, living in fear. And then one night I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, my finger on the trigger. I nearly pulled the trigger in my sleep. The gun was loaded, safety wasn't on. And at that point I started to think, this is crazy. I'm next, I know I'm next, I'm going. So, you know, something has to give in my life. Either I'm going in the hole or I'm going to prison for life. It was one or the other. All of a sudden my eyes opened for the first time. It was like I could see things I'd never seen. All of a sudden me thinking started to change very, very slowly. And today now I just help people who are on the streets, who are in the same situation as myself, who are homeless, going in and out of prisons, in addiction, and I show them that there is a way out of all this, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, you know. As it says, when you come out of that lifestyle and come into this normal everyday living, people from your past will read you like a book, and they want to see if you really are the person that you say you are now. You know, and I'm clean 7 years away from all that stuff, 7 years, so everybody knows I'm legit and I'm honest and I am who I say I am now, you know, which is a normal everyday citizen. You know, just living a normal lifestyle and trying to reach out to people who are broken now and make a difference in their lives. And I'll do that to the day I die, and I will. I love doing what I do.
Fellow Dubliner, Wayne Hart was also a notorious heroin dealer, responsible for destroying the lives of many. Now reformed, he looks back on his life with regret and relief. Regret for the misery he caused, relief that he somehow managed to survive.
I would have grown up in North Dublin, out around Coolock, Cabarrick area. I was always a bit bleeding wild when I was young. It kind of started simple, you know. I was born in the cornfields, you know what I mean? There used to be a farmer over there. They used asses to come over and burn the fields. They used to get paid for it.
You set fire to them,
Set fire to the fields, like, you know. And kind of went down that and I started kind of burning out sheds and cars and you name it, I'd burn her out, you know. And I just kind of got addicted to that kind of madness and that, you know, attention. You know, I loved it. My kind of socialisation as a kid in the family unit was a bit obscure because my kind of childhood heroes went from Martin Cattell, the General, you know what I mean, to Bobby Sands, you know what I mean, Republicans, because my family would be very, very mixed, you know. And then somewhere in the middle was all my morals and ethics and values, and you know, just kind of pulled apart. We kind of started with the armed robberies and then the drugs, you know what I mean. We didn't kind of do the whole robbing push bikes and sheds and horses and motorbikes and cars, and I was never really into that, you know what I mean. If I was in a robbed car, it was for a means to an end, like, you know what I mean.
Was it during the robberies, was that when your pal got killed, huh?
Yeah.
You sense about
that? The guns was after getting picked up. There was no robbery done that day, or no robbery getting done that day.
You just went to pick a gun up?
We went to pick the guns up, yeah, and the gun was loaded. The gun went out in the van, and he died. You know, he died, and we ended up getting jail for that.
How old was he?
He was 32. He'd have been a lot older than me at the time, like. He was about 10, 11 years older than me at the time.
Where did it hit him? What sort of gun was it?
It was a shotgun. It was a sawn-off. And kind of came through here, flew out this way, right through him.
He died instantly?
Yeah.
So what'd you do then when you got a dead man in the back? Because he wasn't driving, was he?
No. There was another chap driving, and he's away ever since. Do you know what I mean? He's gone. You know, I went as well, and I was getting locked up in Bleeding England when I was away. I was out from Malton then, and I got out to the police were looking for me, so I decided to come back. You know what I mean? I had no choice. I was escorted. Do you know what I mean? To the airport, and they were waiting on me. You know what I mean? So I came back here, and I ended up getting sentenced over here then for that. You know, we ended up in here, Mountjoy, but that was a breeding ground for me because I met a lot of people, you know what I mean, a lot of people that have since either been shot dead or have rose to the top and been shot dead, or they're out of the country, you know. A lot of my friends have been whacked over the years. Jail kind of saved my life somewhat. You know, really did. I know that's fucking probably strange to hear, but it did, you know what I mean? And then because of all the shit I kind of grew up in, the stuff that I'd done, you know, I would have still been selling drugs while I was in prison, you know what I mean? And a lot of drugs would have been getting sold in prison for me. And I remember a lot of stuff was caught in the prison, and the lads were all moved out, and there was nothing to say it was me. I got moved out for it as well, you know. But I kind of got to a point then when I started smoking heroin myself.
In the prison?
Yeah. And it was just a kind of way of coping, a way of dealing, you know what I mean? Because especially, you know, back then, it's the same now, like, you know. You go in and you have a name going in, and then you're in for a shooting, regardless of whether it was an accident or not. The dogs on the street don't hear it was an accident. I want to know it's an accident, you know what I mean? Whatever crew is around you, you know what I mean? I'm putting you up on the pedestal, and my name would have got used for so many different things, and threatening people and this and that, and then I had to live up to it inside, you know. So then I done all sorts inside. You know
what were you charged with for the guy who died, and how much did you get?
I ended up getting, it was 10 years I got, but there was, I think it was 5 for the unlawful killing, and 5 for the firearm. That's what I got in the end. And
how old were you then?
That one, I think I was 20 or 21, yeah. and then I kind of just went fucking haywire in prison. Do you know what I mean? I made a lot of connections then in prison, you know. Yeah, I made a lot of connections in prison. I would have got out then and I was like, do you know what? I'd been dabbling with selling heroin. I had people selling heroin for me, you know what I mean, the late 80s, early 90s, and there was serious profit to be made off it over here. You know, probably cost me about 1,600 to get it. That was getting it back from England and all at the time. And I was dealing with a lot of Turks over there. They all ended up getting years, you know what I mean? There was three of them, 3 family members. You all got 20 something years each they got. But I was dealing with them over there, you know, and then when I got back out, I kind of made contact again and I was getting it a lot cheaper and making large profits on it, you know, but because eventually I thought I was controlling the drug fucking was controlling me. And then all just what came with it, you know what I mean, stepping over people, doing things, and then bringing in crack, you know what I mean, to sell, you know, because that was the new drug, it was the new thing. You know, and doing all that and going out and doing robberies to fund it, and you know, I was never bleeding happy. I was always driven. I got something, I wanted more. You know what I mean? I had the best looking board, I wanted your board. You know, I had a good car, I wanted your car. I had a good house, I wanted your house. I was never happy, I was never content. I always wanted. I was always driven. You know, and I didn't care what I done, who I stepped over. That includes family, friends, my kids. You know, stuff that I kind of I came to regret, and then the heroin kind of took all that away. You know what I mean? I was kind of like I was in a different world, different fucking zone. You know, and it just got to a point in my life now where I had a fucking enough. Do you know what I mean? I had enough. I knew I was either going to kill someone, I was going to end up getting a life sentence, or I was going to be killed. You know, a lot of my friends, even my best man at my wedding and all, they're all dead, they're all whacked. Do you know what I mean? This was our dealing with, isn't it? You know, it's life or fucking death.
Staying alive, avoiding imprisonment, and remaining one step ahead of the competition was imperative for Wayne. He had to know his rivals' movements when the Garda were watching him, and know where he could purchase his weapons and wares. Wayne also had to know his market and compete with the prices of other dealers on the streets of Dublin.
I was kind of clever growing up. I always seen an area of money, you know what I mean, for an inn. You know, as I always say to someone, look for the inn. But out in that area, you know, like, you had to go into town to buy your hash. You know what I mean, any kind of drugs, you had to go into the Dublin city centre to get them. And we were a big Coolock, Cabarrick, it's a big area, you know what I mean, so there was a lot of youth, so there was a lot of demand, you know what I mean, so I got this bleeding brainwave. I don't know, you probably heard of King Scum, have you? Yeah. Over here. Heroin used to be sold in £10 packs, you know, and then he was the only one that had heroin, bringing it in with the Duns, with Christy Dunn and all them, and they all got locked up, and he pulled up the 40 punt like at the time, a £10 bag up to 40 quid, so hence he got the name. So what I done was, again, I seen a market and I put them from £40 down to £10, smaller bags, you know what I mean, the quantity was better. So I'd be giving batches to people, 16, and most people were getting 2 for selling 16. We used to give 3 or 4 for selling 16, so the batches were flying out quicker. They were smaller, but the stuff was stronger. You know what I mean? But people were, if I had been giving out normal size bags, there'd have been a lot more deaths.
How pure was the heroin you were bringing in?
One was 52%, the second one was 57%, which is massive, because even now today, you know what I mean, people are probably getting 25%. Yeah, I remember the guard stopped me one day and he was saying, "Hey, do you want to bleed and cut your heroin? It's killing people. There's people fucking dropping left, right and centre." And I was like, fuck off, I don't sell drugs.
The Garda were not the only people keeping a watchful eye on Wayne's activities. One evening, men posing as IRA volunteers raided his home.
They kicked the door in, yeah, you know what I mean, and they were looking for me and put the lads in the ground with guns, and the lads were saying, "No, he's not here, you know what I mean?" And then I asked the lads, "Had they got gloves in them?" I said, "No." I said, "They locked her in the bathroom and they brought Jews into separate rooms, so they were at the handling doors all over the fucking place. So they were either very fucking stupid or they weren't well trained, you know. So as I said, I had connections. Within 2 hours, I found out who they were. Do you know what I mean? They were more like activists, people like to say they're part of something, you know, when a lot of them aren't. Sometimes they're just fucking paper sellers, having them, armchair IRA men.
Armchair IRA men or not, Wayne knew that gunmen or the police could return to his home at any time, but he failed to heed the warning signs and was eventually arrested.
The force were always after me, you know. I've had them dressing up as coalmen and everything, knocking on doors of houses where I lived, and, you know, trying to catch me with stuff and like that. As I said, I was never actually caught with stuff. They said, this was a good one, they said they found a quarter of bleeding heroin in a bird's nest in the roof of the house or something. I don't know what they were saying, you know what I mean? The houses had been searched 3 times, they found nothing, and then they went outside, searched it again, and all of a sudden they found this bleeding 8 a gear in a bird's nest or something. You know what I mean? I'd say they were at the getting her off someone that had got her off me or whatever, you know what I mean? Because I would have been the only one around with that kind of strength gear at the time. You know what I mean? That's what kind of sealed me fate then. But yeah, look, it saved me fucking life.
Life in the Irish underworld has little value. Friends, relatives, fathers and sons have killed or maimed each other in their quest for control. Gone are the days when testosterone-filled young men fought with their fists to settle disputes. Anthony Kelly and his late brother Michael are described by the media as the toughest street fighters the city of Limerick has ever produced. In the 1960s, 70s and 80s, they would fight any man with their fists. But when drugs arrived in Limerick, so too did guns, and the Kellys were catapulted into a world of murder and mayhem that even they struggled to comprehend.
When I was growing up, maybe 1972, 73, and it was only petty things. Well, there was very little for anyone to do. There was no amenities, there was nothing for anyone. And today, it's still the same. You're hanging around doing nothing, like. And a lot of people in those days, you wouldn't have to go to school either. A lot of people wouldn't be at school. The youth, like.
The devil finds work for idle hands, they say. As the Kellys matured, they became involved in robberies and more serious crime. As they sought to cement their reputation, rival gangs opposed them. A feud developed that resulted in an orgy of violence that claimed several lives.
Well, what happened is people went to my brother trying to get 20 pence and a fag off him, and he hadn't got it on him at the time. And they caught him by the throat and kind of threatened him. And then another brother of mine came along and gave one of them a box.
Is this Mick?
Yeah, he came along and gave one of them a box, and that's how it started. Like, so it's a minor thing.
A minor thing soon escalated into Michael being repeatedly stabbed and savagely beaten in a bar. Michael was pronounced dead by a policeman at the scene, but miraculously, he survived.
My brother was in there, Mike, and when he went outside, people attacked him outside and stuck glasses in him. And my mother came out of there, and she thought he was dead in the ground. But he pulled through anyway, but he was in a bad way that time. He was after getting attacked by a few people.
Michael believed that a 24-year-old hard man named Thomas Coleman had glassed him in the face, and so he went to his home to confront him. When Coleman answered the door, he was stabbed to death. Michael was charged with the murder and remanded in custody to await trial. 2 months later, 5 members of the McCarthy family attacked Anthony Kelly as he sat in a bar socialising with a female friend. In the bloody battle that ensued, Tommy and Sammy McCarthy were stabbed to death.
I was just sitting down there. I was only there on my own and in the company of women, like, you know. And they came in and attacked me, and I received injuries out of it. They weren't life-threatening injuries, but I did receive injuries. And 2 of them got killed in, the people that came in. The pub was packed and it was just mayhem in the pub. They got stabbed to death. and I was accused of doing it, and I went through a trial and I was found not guilty at the trial.
Like his brother Anthony, Michael Kelly was also found not guilty of murder. Back on the streets and short of money, Michael had been approached by his old friend Eddie Ryan, an infamous thug who pioneered large-scale drug dealing on the streets of Limerick. He asked Michael if he wanted to get involved in the lucrative drugs trade. Michael shocked Ryan and many others by declining the offer and saying that he wanted to get involved in politics. He felt strongly about poverty and social injustice and wanted to help his community rather than decimate it with drugs.
Well, he in maybe 20 years ago that he went into politics. Now he had a criminal record as well, but he went into politics, and in the election he topped the poll and became an alderman in Ward 3, and a lot of people in the authority were very upset that he got elected. But my brother was a man that be for the ordinary people on the street, and he'd argue up their points and he'd support them in just causes and everything.
And so what happened to Mick?
Well, maybe 13 years ago, someone came into the house and shot him. He was in bed. I was arrested and my two brothers was arrested and my mother. And what it was is, the word just says the guards putting it around, or they were involved, or we were involved to make the family even look bad.
Death had become an unwanted close companion of the Kelly family. Anthony's brother Damien was found dead in a prison cell in what appeared to be yet another murder.
And it went back to, this with the guards goes back even further to 1994, when my brother, he was only 16 years of age, he was murdered. Damien. And he got murdered in 1994. And people admitted what they'd done to him, and they were never prosecuted. He was hung in Spike Island in Cork, and there was never any prosecution. From the time he got murdered, his release date was 2 weeks. He was out in 2 weeks. He was only doing 3 months. And the file in it and what happened to him is gruesome. They tied his hands and in a cell, 3 other people, and they hung him.
Behind his back?
Hands behind his back tied.
So he couldn't have hung himself, could he?
No, and that's, they actually made statements admitting it. But they said that they tried to help him commit suicide.
Following the deaths of Damien and Michael, there was an attempt to murder Anthony outside his home. It wasn't the first attempt on his life.
Someone trying to break through my mother's window, and the guards were there. And the guards had attended the scene. I told them, I said, when I go back up to my house, I said, there'll be someone up there, I said. They were armed, and they done nothing about it, like. And I did tell the guards. But when I went back up then, there was a gunman there with a balaclava waiting.
And where did you get shot?
Got here and I got another one, couple here, and my leg is, so the bullets just went straight through me.
Just sprayed you?
No, it was straight through me from a 9mm handgun. It went straight through.
So how many times have you been targeted? Have people tried to kill you?
Well, maybe 10 or 12 times there.
In January 2011, Anthony was linked to the murder of Des Kelly and his partner Breeder Waters. Both were executed in their home with a shotgun at close range. Like all previous killings that he has been linked to, Anthony denies any involvement.
The way it was supposed to happen, and the guards tried to portray it, is that 2 people shot these people in the house over, and they passed my house or went into my house, which never happened. Like, well, what they said was there was something to do with a drug deal or something to do with that, but I can assure you it was nothing to do with me or my family. I never portrayed myself as I'm going to sit down and let someone come in and kill me. Like, I'm not. And to this day, if someone interferes with me, I still do the same thing. I'll defend myself and my family.
And in October 2009, that is exactly what Anthony is alleged to have done. His daughter's boyfriend was shot in the back with a Glock semi-automatic pistol after making threats on the doorstep of Anthony's home.
I'm in bed actually that morning.
Yeah, and what happened then?
And there were shots outside. So I stayed in the house. 3 of them came to the door. And when they came to the door, then there were shots fired outside.
And one of them was shot in the back?
And one of them was shot, yeah.
Michael Lynch's mother told detectives that she followed her sons up to Anthony's house and he had told them, "If you don't take your sons away, I'll shoot them." Mrs. Lynch added, "The next thing I can remember is Anthony Kelly pulling a gun from behind his back and pointing it." She said that 3 shots were fired and her son Michael was hit in the back.
They said that, like.
Yeah.
But that was it. The version I said was that they came to the house firing shots and the whole lot, and I didn't shoot anyone. And I was I was arrested on the spot when the guards came, and I was forensically tested and everything, and there was no firearm residue on me, there was no firearm residue around my house, nothing. On my clothing and anything. And I was found not guilty. There's very decent guards in Limerick who do their job. And but there is an element, and these guards in Limerick who know the ones what they're doing. I reckon it's about time that they should come out and expose them and get rid of the bad apples and have a decent guard force in Limerick.
When bad apples are exposed within any police force, they often claim to be guilty of no more than noble cause corruption. It is a phrase that has crept into our vocabulary in recent times. The Dundon McCarthy families from Limerick have been branded evil, public enemy number 1, and Ireland's most feared gangland murderers. Whether those claims are true, exaggerated or false, the question is, should these labels deny any person in a civilised society justice? On the 9th of April 2009, James Dillon walked into the Coin Castle Amusement Arcade, which was formerly on this site, and shot dead 35-year-old Roy Collins. Wayne Dundon, who was in prison at the time, was convicted of the murder. He has always protested his innocence, but with a reputation like Wayne Dundon's, no one was ever going to believe him.
I'm Wayne Dundon's father, Kenneth Dundon. I'm not very happy with the justice my son Wayne has got in court in Ireland by gangland figures conspiring to have my child locked up for life. I know he didn't do it. I'd just like to see my kid getting a fair trial. That's all I'm asking. Wayne is no angel, but every person deserves fair justice.
In 1982, Kenneth married Anne McCarthy in London. 5 of their children, Wayne, John, Desi, Gerard and Annabelle, have all led troubled lives. Wayne was deemed so violent by the British authorities that he was deported back to Ireland. The other Dundon brothers joined Wayne in Limerick, where they quickly aligned themselves with their cousins, the McCarthys. The Keane and Calliope families controlled the drugs trade in the city, but their enforcer Eddie Ryan was shot dead by those loyal to the newcomers in the Moose Bar. This sparked an all-out war that resulted in more than 10 people being murdered. Wayne Dundon was the head of the McCarthy-Dundon faction and has been described by the media as a killing machine. He's currently serving life for a murder he says he did not commit. Has justice finally caught up with Wayne Dundon, or is this a case of noble cause corruption? I went to visit Wayne in Mountjoy prison to find out, and I left troubled, very troubled.
I'm taking part in this documentary for the hope that the truth will be heard for what happened to me in the special criminal courts. For all I ask is to be judged by the facts of the case, not the misinterpretation and the lies portrayed in the media.
In the Irish media, you're described as evil, you're described as public enemy number 1, you're described as Ireland's most dangerous criminal. You know, what do you say to that, Wayne?
It's just the media. You've no defence in this country when someone wants to write something in the paper. That's my biggest problem.
Yeah.
But I've never been given a fair shot of a fair hearing from the media I've been approached on up to 10 times to give my side of the story by many different media outlets and reporters and documentary makers. Or a cousin of mine who knew about you advised me to talk to you. And he said, you're willing to come forward and tell the truth or print as you see it, not make up a story.
But you're not. Are you saying you're an angel and you've never done nothing wrong? Or?
Yeah, well, I've pissed off the police many times. Been involved in like assaults on the guards, things like this, and driving offences. But I'm not down to what they put me down to be. I'm not this mad killer that put you in the papers to be. And when this murder happened, I was in prison.
So do you think you've been denied justice because of the person they say you are?
Totally. If my name wasn't Wayne Dundon, I wouldn't be in prison. I've been told that for a fact by every barrister, solicitor, everybody.
In December 2004, Wayne Dundon and his 14-year-old sister Annabelle entered Brannigan's bar in Limerick. Ryan Lee, the barman, refused to serve them because of Annabelle's age. Threats to kill were made, and 30 minutes later, a man wearing a crash helmet entered the bar and shot Lee once in the groin and once in the leg. The pub was later burnt to the ground. 6 months later, Ryan Lee and his employer Steve Collins gave evidence against Wayne Dundon and he was sentenced to 7 years imprisonment. The gunman was never traced. 4 years later, in an alleged revenge attack, Steve Collins' son Roy was gunned down in the Coin Castle amusement arcade. Within hours and without a shred of evidence, the media had linked Wayne Dundon to the murder. The following year, April Collins, who was the partner of Gerald Dundon and the mother of his 3 children, was arrested for threatening a witness in a separate criminal case. This led to an illicit affair she was having with Thomas O'Neill, the infamous Craiglow Wood rapist, being revealed in the press. The news caused huge rows between herself, Gerard and other members of the Dundon family. Fearing the wrath of the Dundons and imprisonment for threatening the witness, April contacted the guards and claimed that Wayne Dundon had ordered the murder of Roy Collins from his cell in Wheatfield Prison. April and her sister Lisa also alleged that John Dundon had ordered the murder of a rival villain, but Shane Geoghegan, an innocent man, had been gunned down in a case of mistaken identity.
April Collins' relationship had broken down with Gerard, and she was trying to pull away from the family as such, kind of gave them an opening. Also, you know, they all jumped on board here. They were all picking individual cases of which they would make the statements on and implicate Wayne and his brothers in different crimes. So it all kind of stemmed from there, from the breakdown of the relationship between April and Gerard. And she basically just wanted them all off the scene, you know, from there on in. It got very nasty from there on in.
At the time April decided to make a statement against the Dundons, her brother Gareth was serving a 7.5-year prison sentence for extortion. Her sister Lisa was in a relationship with Gareth's co-accused, Christopher McCarthy. His brother Anthony Noddy McCarthy was also in prison, serving a life sentence for a gangland murder. All 4 individuals gave evidence against the Dundons in support of April, but we have obtained evidence that indicates that they may have done so through fear or favour.
Noddy is a first cousin of mine. His father and my father were brothers. Sadly, his father has since passed. So the relevance is he was the one that made the statement to the guards saying that Wayne Dundon, he overheard Wayne Dundon ordering the murder of Roy Collins, which everybody knows it never happened. Went to visit my son Larry Jr. With me was my brother James and my nephew JJ. When we went there to visit on a family visit, we met Deirdre Donovan, which is Noddy's mother. I asked him during the visit, I says, why did you set Wayne up for that murder? And he went on to say that he had no choice, that if he didn't make statements to the fact that he overheard Wayne saying that he ordered that murder, that they were going to implicate him in the murder of Sean Poland, which took place in the early 2000s, and also implicate his brother Christopher in the murder of Shane Geoghegan, which was the rugby player. So he back was against the wall. He didn't see he had a way out. But unbelievable, he told me that he didn't even think that Wayne would get charged with it. He goes, I didn't think the cops would take me serious, or the guards would take me serious. He goes, I didn't even think, they don't get convicted. He says, I didn't even think he'd get charged with it. I said, well, he's charged with it because of this. He's doing life in jail.
Many people will think Larry McCarthy is a criminal. He would say that. But in recordings which have been heard publicly for the very first time, Anthony Noddy McCarthy admits to his own mother that he and his brother were indeed being threatened to give evidence.
Yeah. Because he was on a visit the other day, and when he came out to visit, Gareth called him, and Gareth said, the guards was up to see Gareth yesterday, Gareth says, and he's working for the guards now, and if Crystal wants to start giving them money, the what you call it, he's going to make up lies about Crystal to the guards. Yeah? Yeah. He's trying to stop Crystal for money, yeah?
Controversy continues to surround the evidence that convicted Wayne Dundon, particularly the evidence of Anthony Noddy McCarthy. During the trial, the witnesses were presented as individuals who were carrying out their civic duty, rather than criminals with a vested interest in the outcome of the proceedings.
You know, in the court they made it look like Noddy had nothing to lose at that time. But when the case was over and Wayne was handed down his life sentence, Noddy rapidly gained from his evidence during Wayne's trial.
Wayne Dundon is in no doubt that Noddy McCarthy at least holds the key to his cell door. McCarthy claimed that he had heard Wayne Dundon talking on a mobile phone in prison, ordering the murder of Roy Collins. However, it had been 3 years before he mentioned it to anybody, and at that time he had run out of options to have his life sentence overturned or reduced.
I'm actually the only person in the history of Ireland to ever be convicted on jailhouse informant evidence solely, with no cooperation, nothing to back this man up. And throughout my trial, I asked, did the police try and independently verify his statement he made, saying that I walked up the land and he overheard me or telling him that I got someone murdered that day. And the guard said in the box, no. They just took his statement, they took him to court, and that's it.
According to Wayne Dundon, convicted killer Anthony Noddy McCarthy had tired of prison life and was offering this evidence as a bargaining chip to secure privileges or an early release.
He's convicted for many feud-related incidents of violence. He had a 6 year for that. He got convicted of kidnap and a murder. And he was in jail maybe, at this stage, I think maybe 10, 12 years. And he lost all his appeals. And he decided, I know what happened. He tried to get out of jail and he just went up and said, look, I see this guy. He said this, that and the other. And it looks good for him on the parole board, because I'm the bad guy.
Perverse as it may seem, inmates demanding privileges or an early release in exchange for evidence appears to have been the norm amongst this group. At the same time Noddy McCarthy was seeking favour, his alleged tormentor Gareth Collins was attempting to cement deals with the police in exchange for his evidence. The entire case against Wayne Dundon teeters precariously on the word of people with nothing to lose and everything to gain. Several of these witnesses who gave evidence against him were rewarded by the authorities. April Collins received a suspended sentence for a crime that would normally attract a lengthy term of imprisonment. Lisa Collins and Christopher McCarthy were given immunity from prosecution concerning involvement in a very serious crime. And Noddy McCarthy was granted unescorted days out with his family, despite the fact that he was serving life for murder. As for Gareth Collins, well, only Gareth Collins knows the truth about his demands. All of the criminals featured have talked about injustice, but the most grievous injustices are those imposed upon the innocent victims of their crimes. 50 miles southeast of Limerick is Clonmel, the county town of Tipperary, where Anne-Marie Channon is fighting for a different type of justice. Her young daughter and brother had their lives cut short by drugs. Sean Donahue, Wayne Hart and others who dreamt of being like the gangsters, thieves and drug dealers on their housing estates should be educated about the misery and heartache their lifestyle creates.
She was very loving, she was devoted to the kids. She tried her best. And she was always full of life, and she was always on the go, doing something different. To the best of my knowledge, when she admitted it to me, she was 21. It was the weekend of her 21st birthday. She disappeared for 3 days, and we couldn't find her. It was the first time she'd ever done anything like that. And generally, I suppose she got mixed in with the wrong crowd, and she kind of fell in with them, and she kind of fell into the drug situation, and it spiraled, you know, and it was everywhere. Like, it's not just in villages and towns, it's all over the place. The dealers, they're just destroying families, they're taking away lives, and every town and village in the whole of Ireland and further afield have been destroyed by these people. And where one is taken off the streets, there's going to be another one to pick up where they left off. She rang me on the Wednesday and asked me for a loan of 20 euros. And I straight away said no, for the simple reason I knew she was at the drugs and I knew she was dabbling again. She could have been saved, but she took more painkillers that night and went to sleep on her boyfriend's lap on the city watching a DVD, and she never woke up. She basically went into a coma and died. And he woke up the next morning and she was dead in his lap. Christopher was only 43. Myself and himself and my other brother share a birthday in December. And we were the 3 youngest in the family and that. And it's difficult. It's very hard to deal with. You know, he didn't have a chance. When he came out of prison, he came out to nothing. He came out, he was homeless. He was a drug addict trying to better himself. And he came out to nothing. Only to go back to the squat he was living in. And like I said, within weeks of him coming out, he was gone. We had to bury him. And that, again, that was very hard to phase into after only dealing with it 18 months previous. It's very, very hard. I wouldn't like to see other families going through what I've gone through. And having to tell her 3 kids that she was gone. That was probably the hardest part. I just want to see them get on and do well and not to go down that road of destruction. You know, but it's not always easy.
Of course, bringing up children never is or never will be easy. But our children are the only wealth in this world and need to flourish in a just, fair environment that offers equal opportunities regardless of who they are or where they are from.
Somewhere down the line, somebody has got to step up and do something about it. They've got to do more. There's just simply not enough been done.
It's 60 years since Christy Dunn was physically and mentally abused in an industrial school. 50 years since Anthony Kelly grew up on an abandoned housing estate in Limerick. And 40 years since Sean Donahue and Wayne Hart concluded that their only hope was to be drug-dealing, gun-toting gangsters. Nothing has changed. Therefore, no lessons have been learned. Aristotle appears to have been correct. Poverty and injustice are indeed the parents of crime.